Welcome, everyone, to a special episode of The Most Accurate Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Niles. This episode is all about trades, answering listener trade questions, discussing all things fantasy trade related. Joining me is Ryan McDowell from Dynasty League Football and Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros. We want to make sure we had experts available for both redraft and dynasty trade questions. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on and doing this again with me. I want this to be an annual tradition. This is year 2. I love it. How you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. I'm glad to be back for year 2, and yeah, I agree. Let's make this an annual pre-Thanksgiving get together here.
I love it. I love it. Listeners can find Ryan on Twitter at RyanMC23 and read all his excellent content over at DynastyLeagueFootball.com. Pat, really appreciate your time. Always enjoy your content as well. Thank you so much for coming on. How you doing?
Doing well, Brandon, and thanks for having me back. Couldn't agree more with Ryan that it's great you guys are running this back. It was a lot of fun last year, and man, like the season is flying by. It seemed like 3 days ago that I was hanging out with Mr. Ryan McDowell at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, and no, it's actually been 3 months. So time really does fly when you're having fun.
You blink and it's double digits. That's how it goes. Listeners should definitely follow Pat on Twitter at Fitz_FF and read all of his stuff at fantasypros.com. Before we get into it, I just want to remind you that ESPN has launched a new online betting app called ESPN Bet. Sign up using the promo code Bleacher to get $250 in free bets after depositing and making your first bet. You can find the link and full details in the description of this podcast. So we're going to go to some questions. I want to start out, Samson. Thank you very much for the super chat. We appreciate you. Samson wants to know if we would trade Jaylen Warren for Sam Howell. He's their RB4, and the other quarterback is Baker Mayfield. So need a quarterback, Jaylen Warren for Sam Howell. Pat, what do you think about this?
Boy, now that they have officially made Jaylen Warren the starter, I almost wish that Samson would go and like find a different solution to his quarterback issue. Like I understand that Baker Mayfield is probably not the guy to take him to the promised land, but like I'm not even sure if Sam Howell is good yet. He throws a lot, like number 1 in pass attempts per game, but I don't know. Like if the volume doesn't hold up, are we going to be considering Sam Howell like a real asset at quarterback? I feel like he's just kind of a get you by quarterback. And yeah, maybe Jaylen Warren is his RB4 right now, but you never know when someone's going to get hurt. And then, like Jaylen Warren is your third running back and maybe like he's a viable flex option for you every week. So I kind of think Samson would be giving up a little bit of value here. I don't hate it, but I kind of wish he'd find something else.
Makes sense. Find something else if possible. There is that great new news out there about Jaylen Warren taking over that starting job. Ray Corona, thanks for the question, has a dynasty question for Ryan. In a 14-team super flex, they're in a rebuild right now. They want to know if they should give up Drake London and Taylor Heineke for Deshaun Watson. They've got a couple of firsts ready to get some players in the next draft. What do you think, Ryan? Would you flip London and Heineke for Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, that's an intriguing one. Obviously timely with today's news about Watson being done for the year. So this is the type of move you might be looking at in a rebuild situation. And I mean, let's be realistic. This is really just London for Heineke, right? We know. I'm sorry, London for Watson. We know Heineke. Yep. No real long-term value there. Both of those disappointing guys, obviously, based on what we've seen this season in different ways and for different reasons. But just based on how hard it is to get a quarterback, I'm still taking Watson here, and that's with a little hesitancy for a lot of reasons on the field and off the field. But I think the value is with the Watson side, knowing that you're in the rebuild, and honestly, the 14-team part is one that I just kind of skipped over. That makes it that pushes it even more to the Watson side, in my opinion.
Hard to get a quarterback in those big super flex leagues. Thank you so much. Jeff H has a question. Pat, it's a half PPR, 1 quarterback league. What tight end or receivers should they be trying to target in order to trade away Justin Fields? They have Dak Prescott, so they don't need Justin Fields on the roster. Who would you be targeting if you're trying to offload Fields?
Boy, I mean, this is going to be such a cliche kind of answer and probably not a real satisfying one for Jeff H, but like you got to look at the teams that are quarterback needy, and that is really going to polarize your range of targets here. Like there are probably only 1 or 2 teams in his league that are really quarterback needy and who are really going to be looking to, like would be eager takers on Justin Fields. So I think it's, rather than me just sort of arbitrarily throwing out tight ends and wide receivers, I think you have to like look for those teams and see which tight ends and wide receivers they have and where they might have a surplus.
I kind of echo that, Jeff. I know it's not as satisfying, but it is always hard, those open-ended. It really is. Find the team that needs the quarterback and then work from there. That's always good advice when you're looking out for trades. Spinster wants to know who you like better, Pat, Jordan Addison or Noah Brown for the rest of the season.
I have to go with Addison here. And I realize Justin Jefferson is coming back. I realize the passing volume will not be what it was under Kirk Cousins now that Josh Dobbs is the Vikings quarterback. But like the past 4 weeks when Noah Brown has been playing a lot and doing really well, it's been with at least one of Robert Woods, Tank Dell, or Nico Collins out. Like now all those guys are back. It's possible that Noah Brown slides back to wide receiver 4 on the Texans and plays like a third or a quarter of the snaps this week. So Addison's going to be on the field at least, and he's shown he's pretty good. So like he's the better player, and I think his role is a little more secure going forward.
Makes sense to me. Thank you, Spinster. Aaron Eledge wants to know if they should trade Lamar Jackson and Sam Laporta for Patrick Mahomes. They have Travis Kelce, so they're in good shape at tight end, trying to get that quarterback upgrade. Big names there in that trade. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a lot to give up, and like there's maybe a little bit of a net value loss, but like if Laporta is just kind of window dressing for Aaron's team, I get it. Like it makes sense. And man, being able to pair Mahomes with Kelce, talk about a force multiplier as far as stacks go. Like that's pretty lethal. So I would be on board with that one.
Ryan, I'm going to cut the questions for just a moment. I want to know your take on Sam Laporta. How valuable is he? I'm not talking tight end premium leagues, but dynasty leagues. How valuable is Sam Laporta right now, considering we don't usually see tight ends take the league by storm?
Yeah, he's obviously gained a ton of value preseason in our dynasty ADP at DLF. He was the tight end 11, so already being valued in that tight end 1 range before we saw anything, before he took the league by storm, as you say. In our November update of ADP, he's the tight end 1. He is above Kelce, above Andrews, Hawkinson, and everyone else. He's the tight end 1 in dynasty right now, according to our ADP. So I think that's legit. I mean, the age, the production that we've already seen. And I do think, I don't know what Pat thinks about this one, but I feel like we're starting to see subtle steps backwards for Travis Kelce.
Yeah, it's what a value Sam Laporta was in all rookie drafts this year. Just absolutely fun. All right, Pat. Nicholas Pello wants to know if you would trade Travis Kelce for Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mark Andrews. Big names again, and you can kind of respond to Ryan's question about Travis Kelce slipping a bit as well.
Yeah, well, he doesn't slip when Taylor Swift is at his games, Ryan. I mean, like that's all the whole key here. So, as long as they're together and she keeps coming to games, we're going to be fine with Kelce. Yeah, like I think I do this deal. I do think Kelce is the most valuable player in the deal, and generally 80 to 90% of the time you want the side of the deal where you're getting the best player. But Andrews is that's a pretty soft landing if you're coming down from having Travis Kelce, and Amon-Ra is just, I mean, I know having him on several of my teams this year, like he just checks in every week. He's such a consistent performer. Great to have someone like that, and you still got like a premium tight end. So I'd be willing to make that deal.
Excellent. John Paulson popped into the chat. Wants to know why no one will trade with them. John, we love you, and we'll trade with you. I'll join a league with you and trade with you. It's everybody trade with John. He's a good guy. Thanks for listening, John.
John lowballs everyone. That's why.
Oh, that's why. Oh no,
okay.
Those Wisconsin guys can't trust.
The truth comes out.
Exposed live. Zombie Zone has a question. Wants to know what we think about the trade they just did. Jerome Ford and Cooper Kupp for Mike Evans and Keaton Mitchell, and now they want to know if they should start Keaton Mitchell. So, Pat, your thoughts, which side of that trade do you like, and would you start Keaton Mitchell this week?
Man, sorry, Zombie. I'd rather have the Kupp Ford side, I think, with especially with Stafford coming back. I think that's going to reinvigorate Cooper Kupp, and Ford has had, I want to say, like 25 and 18 touches the last 2 weeks. Like, he is being back to being the guy there. And although, yes, it kind of hurts that Deshaun Watson isn't there anymore, and that kind of hurts the touchdown equity. I do think it means the Browns are going to want to run the offense through their running backs a little more. So maybe just kind of a net no difference to Ford's overall value. I just don't know what Keaton Mitchell is going to be yet. It's encouraging that John Harbaugh is expressing regrets about how few snaps Keaton Mitchell played last week and how few touches he got. That's a good sign going forward, but I still think Ford is more valuable, and Kupp versus Evans is probably close to a push. But should you start Mitchell this week? I think I've got him like ranked running back 32 or 34, something like that this week. And, if we see more about Harbaugh being adamant about getting him more touches, maybe I'll move him into the low 20s. I think he's probably a flex play, though.
10 to 12 is the touches. That's the touches I'm waiting for Mitchell. When I start seeing him get 10 to 12 touches, I'm going to get excited. Ryan, from a dynasty perspective, how are you approaching Jerome Ford and Keaton Mitchell? I'm just curious.
Well, different stories there. And in Ford's case, we haven't talked about Nick Chubb in weeks, right? Like, it feels like out of sight, out of mind a little bit. And I'm starting to get the impression everybody is forgetting how serious and how significant that injury was. I'm looking at Ford as a guy who can be the week 1 starter for the Browns next year. So I'm valuing him pretty highly. Like Fitz, I've been impressed with what we've seen so far. It seems like they were trying to go to a committee a little bit there for a couple weeks, and I think Ford has regained the stranglehold on that job. And obviously, that's going to be a productive backfield. They always want to lean on the run. So I like Ford quite a bit. Mitchell, I mean, I'm with Pat. I'm excited. I'm intrigued. I think we all have to be with what we've seen over the past couple weeks. But there's still so much more we don't know. I do think he offers something that the other guys on that roster don't. So I think we'll continue to see him worked into the offense. I did get a trade question earlier this week. Would you trade Keaton Mitchell for a first? And I could not respond fast enough to that DM. Yes, take a first round rookie pick for Keaton Mitchell. Absolutely. Even if he turns into Chris Johnson, right? Like we heard those mentions because of the college connection there. But at this point, yes, take a first. I probably wouldn't take a second for him, but I would obviously take a first.
Excellent. I love it. Thanks for that input there. Zombie Zone followed up. That's over Derrick Henry and Devontae Smith. Definitely go with Henry and Smith over Keaton Mitchell. Thanks for the question, Zombie Zone. Nicholas Polo has a lineup question for you, Pat. Needs a running back and a flex out of Tony Pollard, Rachaad White, Christian Kirk, and Nico Collins. Out of those 4, I guess you're picking 2. Where do you go?
Wow. All right, I guess Nico would be the odd man out because when everyone's healthy, like Nico is kind of the third guy just as far as snaps. I think he might be the best wide receiver they have, but he'd be the odd guy out. Man, I think I'd want to get the 2 backs in there. Just like I like the 2 backs just a little more than Kirk. Rachaad White is just getting so many touches lately. And I know. Well, the 49ers run defense has not been the impregnable unit that it had been in years past. So, and plus White is catching balls like every week. Yeah. He's on pace for like 70 receptions. So, yeah, I would go with the 2 running backs.
Ooh, Kirk gets the Titans this week. I would be tempted to go with him.
That is so right. Those 3, it's really tough. It's
not Nico though. You're right.
Yeah.
I love it. Excellent. Francisco wants to know Detroit or Kansas City on defense this week. I would go with Detroit there, not to step on you, Pat, just because the matchup. The Chiefs are a good defense, but they're playing Philly. I would go with Detroit against Chicago instead. Steel Dan wants to know, Pat, would you rather have Devin Singletary or Rico Dowdle the rest of the season in a full PPR format?
Boy, I guess I'm going to go. I mean, it sort of depends on what you're looking for. If you need immediate playability or if you're looking for sort of a lottery ticket. which Dowdle could be if anything happened to Pollard. All of a sudden, he becomes really valuable. I mean, I think in a vacuum, I'd rather have Singletary, but it's close. I mean, I don't think Dameon Pierce is going to be totally frozen out of the picture here. Like he's going to factor in, and part of the reason Singletary has been so much more effective lately than Pierce was early in the season. The Texans' offensive line is so much healthier now than it was in week 1 or week 2 when they were missing like 3 or 4 starters. So, I don't think Singletary's totally left Pierce in the dust, but he does have every week like flex value at least.
Makes sense to me. Singletary quietly not a bad football player. People kind of forget about him. Not a bad player. Seth DeVore did a trade. He traded Jalen Waddle, Alexander Madison, Sam Laporta for Derrick Henry and Tank Dell. They're set at tight end. It looks like they have good receivers. Really needed a running back. Henry basically replaces Madison in the lineup. How do we feel about that trade, gentlemen? Pat?
Yeah, for what he did, it's a downgrade at tight end. It's certainly a big upgrade at running back and a little bit of a downgrade at wide receiver. As good as Tank has been, I'd still much rather have Waddle. So yeah, maybe it's a slight value loss, but if he really had a hole at running back, I totally get it. And I think it's close to a fair deal.
Excellent. I've got a dynasty question for you, Ryan. Office Depot wants to know if we're holding Trevor Lawrence in a super flex at the expense of needing to start him. They have an extra first. They're tempted to trade away Trevor Lawrence and the first for another quarterback. How are you approaching Trevor Lawrence right now in dynasty leagues?
Yeah, he's been another frustrating guy, obviously, and has become tough to start. That said, I mean, he's still young. We're talking about a year 3 guy, and obviously the pedigree is very high with him. I still am a big time believer long term. I would be a buyer on Trevor Lawrence rather than a seller. And honestly, I would go back to one of our first questions. I would look at buying guys like Sam Howell or even Josh Dobbs, who are producing at a pretty high level. Feel a little bit more comfortable starting those guys. You don't have to pay the first. You don't have to give up Trevor Lawrence for them. Aim a little lower and just kind of keep Trevor Lawrence in your back pocket is how I would handle it.
Excellent. Makes perfect sense to me. Fun Guy wants to know Tank Dell or Devon Achane. Looks like they're thick at running back, trying to upgrade at receiver. Would you give up Achane for Tank Dell, Pat?
Heck no. I would not do it. I mean, I like Dell. I totally undersold him at the beginning of the season, and this was after Thor Nystrom, our college football and NFL draft analyst, was telling me Tank Dell is really good. This guy's hard to cover. He's just unbelievably quick. But I'm such a big Achane fan, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for him. Ryan, I don't know, is Achane like a top 10 dynasty running back for you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think he's in the top 5 range. Trying to check our latest ADP. He's RB8 in our November ADP. Our buddy, Matt Price, co-host on the DLF podcast, actually has him as the RB3, I believe. Wow. So yeah, in general, super high on Achane and, for good reason.
Yeah, and in redraft, I just think he's immensely more value. He's coming back this week, and I've immediately got him at RB7 in my week 11 rankings.
Well, and I mean, I know we're talking trade and trade deadline here, but I think we've had so many players out with injury and on that short-term IR that if you're getting Achane back, it's going to feel like you made a trade for an impact running back, whether you're talking redraft or dynasty. If you've been counting on Justin Fields, or if you've been missing Justin Fields, I should say, and maybe your quarterback 2 spot has been weak, it's going to feel like you made a trade for a quarterback. And same thing with Justin Jefferson. I think it sounds like it'll be another week or so on him. But I mean, even guys at the Kyron Williams level, the Matt Stafford level, these guys are all coming back. We got Kyler and Connor back last week. So I hate to use the trade show to say don't trade, but if you're feeling the pressure to go out and make a trade to make your team better, check your IR. Don't forget about those guys down there, because they might be coming back soon and helping out your team.
And I realized Oh, sorry,
No,
Brandon.
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, I realized Fun Guy has that surplus. I mean, like, that's a really impressive stable with Pollard, Kenneth Walker, Achane, Kyron Williams, Gus Edwards. But like, find a different deal. I think you can get more than Tank Dell for like one of those guys. Even maybe Achane is the most, the guy who would bring the most in a trade in return.
Pat, is a Pollard for Dell offer in redraft fair right now, or is everybody just off Pollard in seasonal leagues?
I mean, I think most people would consider it fair. Like, I'd still rather have Pollard, but I
Right.
think a lot of people would look at that as a fair deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Lindorphins, thanks for joining us. Needs to stream a defense. I'm going to go ahead and answer that one real quick. Of the options that you listed, that's a bunch of really rough options. I think I'd go with the Chiefs. I don't love the Chiefs against Philly this week, but I wish you could get the Jags against Tennessee. They're available, and I think 70% of Yahoo leagues. So I'm hoping the Jags are available for you. But the Chiefs, I think, are the best defense of the ones that you listed. Jacob Ander wants to know if they should trade DeAndre Hopkins and Khalil Herbert for Chris Olave. What do you think, Pat? PPR.
I mean, I'm actually kind of bullish on Olave in the short term, especially if Jameis Winston is quarterbacking the like with his aggressive downfield style. But man, even though I'm not that excited about Khalil Herbert being in a 3-man thing, like I don't see much difference between Hopkins and Olave, honestly, right now. So I don't know, I'd maybe stand pat on that one, Jacob.
Excellent. George Cook wants to know they want to know if they should trade Javonte Williams or Aaron Jones and TJ Hawkinson in order to get Austin Eckler. Looks like they want a running back upgrade, and they've got 2 good tight ends in a half PPR. What do you think about that one, Pat?
Let's see. Kincaid and could we get, what do you think, Ryan? Kincaid and Aaron Jones for Eckler? Would that do it if this other manager was tight end needy, or is that not enough?
I mean, the Kincaid hype is certainly there. It's obviously there in Dynasty, but I think it's there in those seasonal leagues as well. That would be my offer, Jones and Kincaid. If it came down to it, I think I'm doing Jones and Hawkinson to get Eckler as well. I do not consider Javonte and Aaron Jones really even in the same tier right now. I don't know if it's the injury with Jones. I'm not sure what's going on, but outside of a couple of games, he's not even getting the usage. We know the Packers offense is obviously struggling, and Javonte just feels like he's trending up by the week. So Jones would be the guy I would want to move there with one of those tight ends.
Would you be willing to give up Javonte and Kincaid for Eckler? Do you think that's too much?
Yeah, I mean, to get Eckler, I think you have to.
Yeah, and the other manager might bite on that one, I think. So, yeah, start with Aaron Jones and Kincaid as an opener, and then maybe be willing to take it up to Javonte and Kincaid or Hawkinson and Jones.
Makes perfect sense. Nino Pena wants to know if they should trade Stephon Diggs and Breece Hall for Christian McCaffrey and Devontae Smith. That's another kind of lots of big names in that trade. What do you think, Pat?
CMC is such a sure thing that I would be willing to take that slight wide receiver downgrade, maybe more than slight wide receiver downgrade, but still, especially with Goddard out for a while, like we don't have any tight ends who are going to pick up the slack for the Eagles. I think it's just going to be more targets for AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, like wheels up for those guys in the coming weeks. So I'd be willing to make that deal.
Excellent. Car Chisel wants to know they traded Trevor Lawrence and Christian Watson for Kyron Williams. How did they do on that? They have Joe Burrow. Looks like they're pretty thick across the board on their roster. So this is basically depth for Kyron Williams. What do you think, Pat?
It's one of those deals that would have just dropped your jaw before the season. Like, what? Is this guy crazy? And no, I mean, I actually think it's a pretty good deal considering his roster. Like, funny how things change in a couple of months, but yeah, it looks like a pretty decent deal to me.
Excellent. Ryan, temperature check on Christian Watson. Like, where's his value in Dynasty right now after such a miserable season so far?
Yeah, certainly trending down. He lost quite a bit of value in our latest ADP. I think he's in the wide receiver 3 range right now, maybe in the late 20s, early 30s. But honestly, I'm more worried than that. I think he's going to continue to lose value, and I would be trading him right now in Dynasty or in redraft. I mean, he's not even worth a roster spot in redraft right now, I don't think. So,
Man.
you know that. Chisel got got Kyron Williams for free, it feels like.
I like it. I like it.
I was on a show earlier today and someone referred to Christian Watson as the new Doxson, Josh Doxson.
Oh.
Like, oh man, don't raise that name again. Like, I don't ever want to hear that name.
I was so high on Josh Doxson. I liked him so much coming out of the draft. It was so sad. The Zookeeper wants to know, is Kyler Murray back, Pat? Is he back?
I think so. Like, he looked pretty spry too. The one thing I wasn't sure how aggressive he was going to be as a runner, and he looked really good as a runner too. So yeah, I think he's back.
Didn't look like he was hesitating at all. It was good
No.
stuff. Travis Kent, would you keep Puka Nacua or try to trade? If so, who would you target? So I'm going to let you both answer this from your respective points of view here. Pat, Puka in redraft, would you trade him away right now? I know this is kind of it's hard, these questions in a vacuum, because context is important. And then who would you maybe target?
Yeah, like, all right. Would I trade Puka away? First of all, like, I think he's going to have wide receiver 2 value as long as Stafford is there, even with Kupp. Like, I don't think Kupp completely marginalizes him by any means. I think he's still a top 20 receiver. I'm trying to think of what would be like commensurate value at running back. I don't know, someone like James Cook. Does that sound about right to you, Ryan? Like, if you're balancing for redraft, somewhere in the James Cook range?
That's probably right in redraft, and if it is right, I would keep Puka.
Yeah.
Ryan, in Dynasty, how high are you on Puka?
Yeah, super high, and our users are too, because he is the wide receiver 14 in our latest ADP already. I believe he is the wide receiver 2 in the class, behind only Jordan Addison in that latest ADP update. It does feel like the market is cooling a little bit on Nacua, though. I mean, not only Kupp coming back, I know the numbers have not really dipped for Puka, even with Kupp coming back, but Stafford missing a game or two, and they had their bye in there. Again, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind that things are trending down a little bit for Puka Nacua. I would be a buyer, not a seller on him.
Excellent. AB wants to know, Sam Howell or Justin Fields rest of season, rushing upside versus passing yardage right now. What do you think, Pat?
I tend to lean heavily towards the running quarterbacks, and Sam Howell does give you some rushing too. It's a nice bonus with him, but I'm going Fields here. Like, that rushing production he has is pretty special. And like, I'm not so sure that Fields isn't just as good a passer as Sam Howell. Like, again, I still don't really know whether Sam Howell is good yet. Like, I haven't made up my mind on that. And my mind seems to change from like half to half in every game he plays. Like, there are times when he just looks horrendous, and other times I'm like, wow, this guy's maybe pretty good. So I'm still trying to decide, but I would rather have Fields rest of the season.
Excellent. Travis Kent traded Tony Pollard for Javonte Williams in a full PPR. Sounds like we like that trade, right? We like that trade? Getting rid of Pollard to get Javonte Williams, based on stuff we said earlier?
I do, yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, you're still hanging on, Fitz.
I know, man. Like, it's just
it hurts.
Yeah, and the efficiency just hasn't traveled with Pollard into this new expanded role. And like, which doesn't shock me. I mean, I was kind of below consensus on him in the draft rankings, but like, I'm still optimistic that he's going to have a better stretch run than he's had so far. But yeah, like, I would rather have Javonte. If you gave me that binary choice, I would pick Javonte.
Another challenge trade here from Jack Berkowitz. Traded Saquon Barkley for Josh Jacobs straight up. What do you think of that, Pat?
I am in favor of that. Saquon's value is just like in that offense. It is going to take another, it's going to take one of those 35 touch games for him to have big time value. And if you give him that many touches, it just pumps up the injury risk so much. So yeah, I'd rather have Jacobs.
FC Eagles has a lineup question for us, Pat. Would you go Jared Goff or Kyler Murray? And then at the flex, do you want Isaiah Pacheco or Dalton Schultz? And then they've got two good defensive options with the Steelers and Jags. Where would you go here for FC Eagles?
I'm going Goff against the Bears. Bears are pretty good against the run, not quite as good against the pass, although that's kind of an underrated defense. I think I'd rather start Goff at home than Kyler. Even though I think now all of a sudden, and who would have thought this in August, I think Cardinals Texans might have the highest Vegas total on the board this week.
Wow.
One of those things you never could have imagined. I would play Pacheco over Schultz, even though the Philly run defense is really good. Yeah, I know. I heard that trepidation in Ryan's voice. He's not so sure he agrees. It's just, yeah, I mean, Schultz has been like in sync lately with CJ Stroud. He's been hot. I still have to go with the high volume running back there. And I'm sorry, I missed it was Steelers or was it Jags?
Steelers or Jags? Yeah, Steelers against the Deshaun Watson-less Browns, or the Jags versus the Titans.
I got to go Steelers there.
Steelers, yeah, just the better defense. Yeah, it makes sense. I like both, though. I like both those options. Let's see here. Natty wants to know, is it crazy to play Kyler Murray over Joe Burrow against the Ravens? What do you think?
I'm still going with Burrow, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. That makes sense to me. Jack, it's not crazy to start Devon Achane against the Raiders. I don't think that's crazy at all. Jason Cox has Tyreek, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, and Jacoby Myers in a half PPR, 3 wide receiver league. League mate has a bunch of running backs, but his receivers stink. Who should they target with those receivers that they have? They looks like Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt are all available. Williams, I'm not sure which one, but if that's, I'm guessing Kyron Williams. I'm guessing. So based on the way they're organized there, so build us a trade here, Pat. I know there's a lot of names just thrown out there.
Okay, I'd be looking to get rid of Jacoby Myers. I think his value is kind of in the tank, and hopefully people are still looking at the season-long numbers and not realizing that, like, as soon as Josh McDaniels walked out the door and, Jimmy Garoppolo's job went with him, like that drains so much value from Myers. So I would take a ham sandwich for Myers right now, but, like, if you could get Kareem Hunt for him, and I mean, try for Kyron Williams. And if you can't get him, dial it down to Kareem Hunt. And considering the depth he has at running back, I'll bet he'd take that.
Nice. I like that. Okay. Isotrap wants to know George Kittle or Dalton Kincaid rest of season. What do you think, Pat?
I think Kincaid. Are you with me on that one, Ryan?
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say Kincaid as well.
From a dynasty perspective, Ryan, we talked about Laporta being number 1 right now. Where's Kincaid fall now that he's kind of had a little stepping up in that offense recently?
Yeah, I believe he's tight end 5. I know he's tight end 5 in my personal dynasty rankings. I think he's tight end 5 in ADP as well. Yeah, he is. So he's overtaken several guys, but most notably is another young guy, Kyle Pitts, who's fallen down to tight end 6. So we've got it Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson, and then Kincaid.
Excellent. Pat, Steel Dan needs a bye week replacement. How much would you give up to fill in one player for a week? The offer on the table is they give up Chris Olave and they get Brian Robinson to help them with the bye. I don't know that I trade away somebody like Chris Olave for a bye week situation, although Brian Robinson's good. So I don't know. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, and Brian Robinson against the Giants, like that is a really nice bye week solution in this, matchup against how many times are you going to see the Commanders favored by 10 points and getting this obviously run friendly game script. Man, like it's not a horrible deal. I would have a hard time, despite the fact that it's been a slightly disappointing season for Chris Olave. I'd have a hard time pulling the trigger on that, but look, I get it if he's 5-5 or 4-6 and fighting for that playoff spot and really ravaged by buys this week, as I know I am in a lot of leagues. I'm way too invested in the Falcons, and their bye week is killing me in a lot of leagues. So yeah, like I can totally see it. I would not give that like a huge thumbs down. be tough for me to do, but if his back is against the wall, I can understand it.
All right. Jack Smith, should they trade Javonte for Tony Pollard? We already answered the other side of this. We like the Javonte Williams side of that deal. Jack Berkowitz, McBride or Laporta, and Lamar or Purdy. I'm going to take this as rest of the season questions from Jack Berkowitz. So McBride or Laporta and Lamar or Purdy. What do you think, Pat?
Got to go with Laporta over McBride. As you know, much as I like McBride and love how involved the tight ends are in the Arizona offense, Laporta is just such a stud. And I have to still go with Lamar over Purdy, even though Purdy is terrific whenever he has all the weapons in place. I know the last few weeks have been frustrating with Lamar, but there's still so much weekly rushing upside. And like, he's looked pretty good as a passer too. It just hasn't clicked for him from a fantasy perspective the last month. I think it will, though, in the weeks to come.
Carchisel wants to know if they should pick up Calvin Ridley off waivers. They have JSN, Rashee Rice, and Jake Ferguson. How are you approaching rostering Calvin Ridley right now, Pat? It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd take him over JSN. Like, I think he's got more value than JSN in redraft. But like, still not a guy I want to start necessarily. I mean, he's just been really, and the weird thing is he has produced much better numbers when Zay Jones has been in the lineup. And that's sort of counterintuitive. You would think that without Zay, there would be some target spill over to Ridley. Hasn't been the case. His per game numbers are way better with Zay Jones in there. So, I don't know when Zay Jones is coming back now. I mean, he's got legal difficulties, injury difficulties. But yeah, you would think things would click for Ridley eventually, but man, he has been a very frustrating asset in fantasy in 2023.
Ryan, are you holding Ridley or are you actively trying to move him? Are you buying low on him? I'm just curious what the dynasty temperature is on Ridley right now.
I am selling low. So he was wide receiver 19 in our preseason ADP. He's basically doubled that up now because he's wide receiver 38. And I mean, I think with Ridley, sometimes the hype just overcomes us, right? And that's what I think happened. To think that he was a top 20 dynasty wide receiver at his age with nearly 2 years off in an offense that as exciting as that Jags offense was last year, we'd never seen Ridley as a part of that offense. So there were a lot of unknowns there. And I mean, he was even higher in season long leagues. I think he got up to that wide receiver 1 range, at least in like underdog leagues and things like that. So honestly, I think we just overvalued him. I think wide receiver 38 is about where he should be in dynasty right now, but I would be selling. He turns 29 here in just a couple weeks. So
that happened fast.
Yeah. I'm taking what I can get for Calvin Ridley. Excellent.
Pat, Raheem Mostert or David Montgomery rest of the season?
Oh, Montgomery. Yeah, I mean, I think Achane is really going to diminish Mostert's role. And by the way, Mostert has like had a pretty serious fumbling problem of late. Like I think the Dolphins are probably getting Achane back in a nick of time because I'm guessing they would probably like to reduce Mostert's role significantly.
All right. Aaron Jones, Rachaad White, and David Montgomery are the running back Schweppe has. They need a receiver. So what kind of move might you try to make? Which one might you try to move, Pat?
Boy, as Ryan said, I mean, it's like been really sort of a frustrating season for Aaron Jones. I think the Packers run blocking has not been great. As a Packers fan, I can attest to that. So who would I I guess I would try to send Aaron Jones away. And I'm trying to think of what would be like fair wide receiver value with Aaron Jones. Do you think like, I don't know, Zay Flowers? Does that sound reasonable to you guys, or is that not enough, too much?
That sounds all right. I'll give you guys a plug over there, Pat. I've been using the Fantasy Pros strength of schedule, the rest of season strength of schedule tool quite a bit lately. And so I'm looking at those wide receivers right now, and you guys give them a star rating just for the strength of schedule, just for the remaining games, and 4-star rating for Nico Collins and Tank Dell. So I think if I could get either one of those Houston wide receivers for Aaron Jones, I would jump at that chance in this question.
I like that.
I love that. All right. Hello, Mr. Scampers, to our friend Mr. Scampers. Thank you for joining us. Jay Sant, Debo and Lockett for Nakua. What do we think about Debo Samuel and Tyler Lockett for Puka Nakua? Pat?
Man, if you need the 2-for-1, like I like it. I like the Debo Lockett side of that.
Excellent.
Yeah, I do as well. That feels a little rich. I love Nakua, but if we're talking redraft, that's more than I would want to give up.
Yeah.
Dynasty, that's kind of a fair deal in Dynasty.
Yeah, if he's, I agree. Yeah, this would be a good Dynasty trade. But if he's looking to give up Debo and Lockett for Puka, I don't think that's a good deal.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear it. So, Ryan, we've got another Dynasty question from Mile High Luke. They went all in and gave up a 24 first and second for George Pickens and Amari Cooper to pair up with Deshaun Watson. They're obviously not thrilled with that result. Now they're left with Joshua Dobbs, and that's it. So they need to find a cheap to acquire quarterback. What kind of target would you go after in a Superflex Dynasty? I'm assuming it's Superflex since they have Dobbs, but because I'd just keep, if it's not super flex, I would just keep Dobbs. I think he's fine for the rest of the season, Mile High Luke. But assuming it's a super flex, who might you be going after?
Yeah, well, Dobbs would be one of the targets I would go after. So he's got that one. Typically, you have Dobbs as your second, or ideally, you have Dobbs as your second with a hiring reliable guy. That's not the case here, and sometimes we just get stuck. Sam Howell would be my number one target. I think because of some of the questions that Pat mentioned earlier, some of the uncertainties as far as will he even be the starter next season, that has kept his price and his ADP down quite a bit, given his solid production this year. So Dobbs and Howell are the two names I mentioned earlier. Those would definitely be my top two targets. Okay. I was reading the question wrong. He said he's out of fab, so he can't even grab like a DTR type off the waiver wire. Yeah, it's
Tommy DeVito.
Good luck, Luke, that you're in a tough spot right now, obviously.
Excellent. Also, I'll just add, Mile High Luke, check out the bad teams in your league and see if any of them have someone like Matthew Stafford or some type of player they might be trying to offload. You might be able to get them for a late second or a third or something like that. So let's see here. Office Depot has another Dynasty question. Instead of sending Trevor Lawrence offers, they just offered Aiden O'Connell and a second and a fourth for Sam Howell. I like that trade. Ryan, what are the odds that gets accepted?
Well, again, like Pat was saying earlier, it really comes down to team makeup and how these specific teams are doing. If the Sam Howell team here is not going to make the playoffs, and you can get a second plus a rookie quarterback with at least a little bit of upside, you think, then yeah, that's probably a fair deal.
Excellent. Toby wants to know if they should hang on to Dallas Goedert since they don't have an IR slot open for him since he's doubtful. Also has Evan Ingram. So, Pat, would you hold Dallas Goedert, two tight ends, basically, when you've got Evan Ingram?
Man, like if Toby needs depth elsewhere, I think it's okay to get rid of Goddard, because even when he comes back, I think you're probably looking at a dilemma with Ingram versus Goddard. And Ingram has had 7 targets or more in every game from week 2 on. Like, he is consistently involved. And I think that's part of the reason why Calvin Ridley is not doing anything, is because like Lawrence is so comfortable throwing to Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. Like, those guys are continuing to get a big share of the Jacksonville targets.
TJ Hawkinson. Sorry, Brandon.
Nope.
TJ Hawkinson is the only tight end with more top 12 tight end finishes than Evan Ingram this year.
Wow, that's a great stat. I love it.
So
Salim wants to know their wide receivers are Garrett Wilson and Calvin Ridley. Would you trade if you need a receiver? Would you trade Breece Hall for Mike Evans, Pat?
Yeah, man. I think it's a little bit of a value loss just because of the scarcity of running backs. But if he is, loaded for bear at running back, I think you could justify it.
All right, that makes sense. Breece Hall has to be like a frustrating player to roster right now because he's so good, and sometimes he just kind of craps the bed, or the Jets, crap.
Well, I'm kind of interested, interested in seeing what the Jets backfield looks like moving forward. Kind of a minor blip on the radar in season long leagues probably, but the Jets gave up on Michael Carter yesterday and released him. I think he landed with Arizona. But from a dynasty standpoint, we start thinking, does that mean even a bigger workload for Breece Hall? Does it mean a guy like the rookie Izzy Abanikanda is going to start seeing some work? Either way, if it's either one of those situations, I'm pretty excited because we want to see Breece Hall get more work. Obviously, I'm personally an Abanikanda fan, so I'd like to see him get on the field. But regardless, I don't know. I would probably try to keep Breece Hall in that situation. I know you're hurting at wide receiver, but I think I'd hang on to Hall.
Nice. Jake Covey has strong wide receivers, including Diggs, Lamb, Olave, Garrett Wilson, DeAndre Hopkins, Deontay Johnson. That is very strong at receiver, but really weak at running back and tight end. Who would you give up out of those receivers to try to get an upgrade at tight end and or running back, Pat?
I don't want to give up CeeDee Lamb under any circumstances right now. I'm keeping him. Man, like Deontay Johnson, I think might be like banged up now, and he's got a quarterback problem. So like I'd be willing to trade him, I'd pretty much be willing to part with any of these guys in the right deal. Maybe even Diggs, although boy, a Diggs Lamb duo would just be nice to have. So, but like the thing is, if you keep Diggs and Lamb, none of the guys that you would be able to get if you dealt away Olave, Wilson, Hopkins, Deontay Johnson is going to be better than Mixon or Pollard. Like you would maybe have to throw in like, make it an Olave and Pollard deal to get an upgrade to someone like, I don't know, Travis Etienne or something like that. So, boy, like, I mean, I don't totally hate the Mixon Pollard combo either. Like it's not with receivers that good. If you're starting Diggs and Lamb every week and like flexing Garrett Wilson or Olave or Hopkins, I don't know, not awful. So yeah, like he could use a tight end upgrade. I'd maybe focus on that first and see if you could maybe get rid of like, I don't know, see if you could get a premium tight end, like a Mark Andrews type for Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I like to give my trade partners a little bit of choice here if I'm in this type of situation. And again, in redraft, if I'm looking at Olave, Garrett Wilson, Hopkins, and Deontay is all kind of about the same. Find that Andrews, that Hawkinson, that honestly even like Trey McBride manager in your league, and say, I'll give you your choice. You can have any of these 4 wide receivers for Andrews or for McBride or for Kincaid. Put the ball in their court, give them a little bit of power and get a deal done.
Excellent. Ryan, Sam Howell, we've talked about him a little bit. Trading for him in Dynasty, Za215 wants to know, they're willing to move Isaiah Pacheco, Amari Cooper, or Romeo Doubs for him. I'm going to frame the question this way. So answer please for one quarterback and Superflex. Is it worth moving a good position player for Sam Howell?
Well, I mean, it comes down to how desperate you are this year and what your situation is. I mean, again, if you just lost your QB2, if you had Deshaun Watson as your QB2, and now you're in panic mode as you get near the playoffs, then maybe your hand is forced and you have to make this type of deal. I would not trade Amari Cooper in that deal. Pacheco and Dobbs maybe would be something I would consider, but if you're just talking about Howell as a buy in general, he wouldn't necessarily be at the top of my list on that.
Excellent. Pat, Sammy wants to know, should they start Justin Herbert or Kyler Murray this week? Herbert against the Packers versus Murray against the Texans. It's kind of a tough one.
It is. I would go with Herbert against the Packers. The Packers are having some defensive issues right now, including like they've had Jair Alexander in and out of the lineup. If Alexander doesn't play, they also traded Rasul Douglas. So like they're pretty weak at cornerback right now. I don't know. Like, I think it's going to be a big day for Justin Herbert this week. I'd start him.
Excellent. And what do you think of Michael Mayer the rest of the year at tight end there, Pat? Sammy has a follow-up question.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's maybe a mid-range tight end too. Like I don't think he's going to be a real comfortable start every week with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. And I hate to say anything disparaging about Aiden O'Connell because he went to the high school my kids are currently attending.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's going to maybe limit the upside that we have for Mayer the rest of the way.
Excellent. Hope that helps you, Sammy. Thanks for the nice comments. My friend Jen Akins popped in and said that she's sad she's not joining us. So, Jen, we miss you. That's all I'll say. Steel Dan, how do you feel about rostering two defenses to play matchups? They're 8-2. They have the Chiefs and the Steelers. The Dolphins and Lions are also available. For me, it's really roster size. If you've got the bench depth, then I don't mind doing it, but it's one of those things that it's the first thing I'm going to drop if I find myself in a roster crunch. What do you think, Pat? Do you ever roster two defenses?
Late in the season, I generally don't do it until like week 13 or 14 at the early. Like, if you feel good about your depth and you have a roster spot like you feel like you can play with, then it's not bad. And maybe even like kind of play things a week ahead where you're trying to like play keep away from opponents and keep certain defenses off the waiver wire. Like I get it. I generally don't think about that until like week 13 or 14 at the earliest. Like it's more of an end game strategy than a week 11 strategy, I think.
Excellent. Josu Hidalgo wants to know if they should trade Keenan Allen and Devon Achane for CMC and Nico Collins. So big names, but you're getting CMC. That's a tough one for me. What do you think, Pat?
I'd be willing to do it. I mean, that would be, you are giving up a lot, but Nico's a pretty good piece of wide receiver. And to get CMC, who's just got such massive value, I think I'd do it.
Excellent. FC Eagles, I'm just going to quickly answer McBride or Schultz. McBride's a little healthier than Schultz and has the better side of that matchup, so I'd go McBride there. Mr. Scampers wants to know, in a half PPR, should they trade away Saquon Barkley and Calvin Ridley to get Austin Eckler? That's a yes for me, Pat. What do you think?
Slam dunk, Scampers. Yeah, by all means. Like, if Saquon still has that kind of value, pounce on that one.
Absolutely. Scampers should pounce. I love this. Jesse Driscoll needs help. Should they trade Ramondre Stevenson and Josh Downs for Tony Pollard and Tank Dell? Bunch of interesting names there. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I would do that. Boy, that is pretty interesting. I think although Stevenson looked rejuvenated the last time we saw him, I think it's pretty much of a lateral move at running back there. And I would rather have Tank Dell than Josh Downs. So yeah, I like that deal.
Excellent. Ryan, I'm going to send this question to you. Ricky Rocks wants to know what running back is fair to offer for JSN. In redraft, it's really, JSN to me doesn't have a whole lot of trade value in redraft. So that's why I'm going to point it to you and assume it's a dynasty question.
Yeah, well, JSN has lost some dynasty value, obviously, since the start of the season with a slow start to his career, but still a ton of upside. So I think you're still going to have to aim pretty high. I mean, we just mentioned that name, Saquon Barkley. You might have to go that high. Really anyone in that RB2 range. We're talking about Barkley, Jacobs, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift. Those are kind of the contemporaries when we're talking about JSN's dynasty value. So he's not cheap.
Excellent. Jesse Driscoll also wants to know, they traded away DeAndre Swift and Sam Laporta. They got Breece Hall and Justin Jefferson. What are your thoughts on that trade, Pat?
I'm in favor. Maybe Justin Jefferson isn't quite as valuable with Dobbs as he was with Kirk Cousins, but like still obviously a top 5 receiver and an upgrade at running back, I think. So I'm nice job, Jesse.
Excellent. Right Guy McFly also was looking to try to acquire Justin Jefferson. Wants to know if Keaton Mitchell plus Garrett Wilson is a good trade to get Jefferson.
I think that's a pretty reasonable offer. Like I can't guarantee it's going to get accepted, but like I don't think the other manager can be insulted by that. I think that's a pretty good offer.
Excellent. CXL 34 just traded away, made a big trade. Just traded Tua, Kelsey, Henry, and Waddle to
Oof.
get Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Swift, and Tony Pollard. Looks like they've got quarterbacks with Kyler and Howell there. So that's a lot to digest there, Pat. I'm going to give you a second to take a look at it
Well,
and
yeah, I'm
figure out what you
looking.
think.
I'm looking at this, Brandon. I'm seeing that he's already stockpiled Kincaid and McBride at tight
Mhm.
end. So losing Kelsey, that seems doable. Like he's got the quarterbacks to make up for the loss of Tua. So if he's giving up Henry and Waddle and getting this windfall at receiver with Tyreek and Diggs, and also Swift and Powell, like big gains at wide receiver and running back,
Mhm.
when he's got ample quarterback and tight end depth, yeah, I think CXL killed it on this one.
Excellent, excellent. Let's see. We have a lineup question. So Noah Brown versus Arizona, Jacoby Myers versus Miami, or Hollywood Brown versus Houston. Which receiver do you like of those three, Pat?
I'm going to go with Hollywood on this one. Just missed a long touchdown with Kyler this past week. And again, with all of the Houston receivers healthy, I don't think we should count on a big role for Noah Brown this week. And as I mentioned before, like Jacoby is barely playable now, I think, with the coaching change and the QB change.
All right. Pat, now from Daniel, now and later, JSN or Quentin Johnston?
Oh man. So long term, I'd rather have JSN, and I've got a JSN related question for Ryan right after I answer this.
Excellent.
But for now, boy, for Quentin Johnston has just proven to be so gaff prone in his rookie year. Like I think I'd still rather have JSN, even though he's like really limited as the third receiver. So I think I'm going with JSN in both instances. Ryan, I got to ask you, for Dynasty, would you rather have JSN or Puka Nakua?
I have Nakua rated higher, but it's definitely close. I mean,
Close. Yeah.
obviously that's one of those situations, like you said earlier. Go back a couple months, and that seems like silly talk. But those two guys have been headed in different directions. I think what we've seen from JSN the past month or so, at the very least, the usage has gone up, more targets, more snaps, is encouraging. And as great as Tyler Lockett is, he's over 30 years old, and JSN is going to get his shot.
Excellent. Pat, Ure wants to know, in a full PPR, they traded Tua and Brees Hall. They got Stephon Diggs, Tajay Spears, and JSN. They have Eckler and Achane, so they've got good running backs. Are they in good shape with that trade?
I think so. Like it's mainly about getting Diggs, and assuming that Ure has like another answer at quarterback, yeah, I think that's a good deal.
Excellent. Who's your Devo? Is it a 12-team PPR? They won basically just trade ideas. They said they're 4-6. It sounds like they're reeling, looking around. They've got Goff and Murray. They've got Barkley, JT Connor. So they've got some decent running backs out there. AJ Brown, Michael Pittman, DeAndre Hopkins, and then they've got Laporta. So they've got some decent players. Should they ride it out, Pat, or would you be trying to eye a move here?
Yeah, I would say so it's not a bad team at all. I don't see any discernible weaknesses here. Like it's just obviously Hoosiers had a run of bad luck. So I mean, I'm inclined to say ride it out. Like I'm tempted to say trade Barkley because of the name
That's what I was
brand
going to say
value.
as well.
Yeah, like he can get the most. A guy whose perceived value is probably a lot greater than his actual value. See if you could get Barkley for like, I don't know, some big wide receiver upgrade, and see if you can just ham and egg it at running back the rest of the way and just like bury people at wide receiver with like AJ, some stud you get in exchange for Barkley, Pittman, and then like flex D Hop, and see if you can just pummel people at wide receiver every week.
It's been a pretty good strategy this year. I like that. Will Hayes wants to know, should they trade CMC to get Mixon, Achane, and Antonio Gibson? I'm assuming they need running back depth, and that's why they're considering this. Is that enough for CMC, Pat?
Boy, sure. If he needs depth, if that's where he is at, where he is CMC and he's starting like, Chuba Hubbard in his other spot or worse than that, like I think you could warrant it. So yeah, like I think Mixon and Achane is like a pretty reasonable exchange for CMC.
All right. Steel Dan, would you trade Chris Olave for Hollywood Brown? Now and later, it sounds like they really need the win this week.
Boy, I wouldn't want to. I mean, I really wouldn't want to. So no, I just couldn't do it, Steel Dan. Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all the questions in the chat. We're at an hour, so I will mercifully let my outstanding guests move on with their day. Listeners, don't forget to check out Traders Alley on 4for4.com every week for all your redraft trade advice. Huge thanks to you, Ryan and Pat, for joining me today. Once again, you can find Ryan on Twitter at RyanMC23 and at DynastyLeagueFootball.com. Ryan, thanks again. Any final thoughts or plugs before we go?
No, I think you covered it all. Just again, thanks for having me on, and I'll see you again next November.
I sure hope so. And listeners, once again, follow Pat on Twitter as well at Fitz_FF. Read his stuff at fantasypros.com. Pat, thanks again. Any final thoughts or plugs from you before we go?
Yeah, you can just, find all my stuff at fantasypros.com. And thanks again for having me, Brandon. Great catching up with you again, Ryan. Hope both of you guys have a great Thanksgiving.
Excellent. Everyone have a nice Thanksgiving. Hope you make the playoffs and win your leagues. Thanks again. Always a pleasure. Don't forget to subscribe to The Most Accurate Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at 2guysbrandon. Thanks for checking us out and have a good day.